The Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome to the Captain's Log Radio. Captain Jonathan Moss. I've got with me today Captain Rafiki, Tiki, Rafael, man. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing really good, Jonathan.
Awesome. His name is Rafael, but I call him Rafiki Tiki, and I think that's because you had your name on Instagram or something. I don't know where I got that from. But, dude, it is great having you here on the show, bro.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here, man.
So tell me, let's talk about you. Where do you guide? I know where you fish. I know the kind of fish you like to chase and hunt, but share with our listeners, where are you based out of? What kind of fishing do you do? What kind of charters do you do?
Yeah, man. So, I'm down here in Miami. I fish Biscayne Bay mostly. That's like, I'm right close to it. So that's like 90% of my area that I'm in most of the year. But I also do out of Flamingo, Evergaldes National Park. And, in Biscayne, I like to target a lot of bonefish and permit. And then in the glades, it's a lot of redfish, snook, trout, a lot of tarpon, big tarpon in the wintertime. So, it changes seasonally.
Now, are you doing fly, spin, both, artificial bait? What's your go-to?
I usually do light tackle, spin, and a lot of fly fishing. I usually prefer to do the fly fishing, but, I'm not mad at throwing a little bit of light spinners.
Yeah, absolutely. I like having variety. So I
Yeah.
always have the spinning rods on my boat. Even if I have a fly specific charter, I like to have a spinning rod or two just in case. You never know. The wind might just be really hard and they can't handle the cast. Or perhaps the fish are just not allowing us or really spooking or not allowing us to get close enough for that fly presentation.
Yeah.
So we're having to cover some water and throw a spin. We're going to say.
Yeah, no, there's definitely like applications where the fly rod just, it's just not happening. I mean, it always happens, you're fishing a mangrove shoreline, there's just a snook just a little too deep in there. You just can't get the fly in there. A fluke never hurts.
Yeah, yeah, you get that like 4-inch split tail jerk shad, and I like to rig it weedless, skip it underneath those mangroves, and buddy, hold on. If you make the right presentation, a lot of times they're just gonna smoke it.
Most
You
of
know,
the time, yeah.
Snook, I get this question all the time for my charters. People ask me about snook.
Mhm.
Snook are very much like a bass. Now, if you're listening and you're not familiar with snook, okay, that's the fish that's over my shoulder. Some people call them the line sider. I call them a really good time. Now, they like structure. You can find them around docks. You can find them around mangroves. You can find them in grass. We found them a couple weeks ago. We were down in Flamingo fishing together and filming, and we found them in the grass. But when they're around structure, I mean, they like being around that structure. They like to ambush bait. Okay, they are an apex predator. So having a situation where you can skip that bait deep into those mangroves and having it weedless is the key to having them blow that thing up. But big leaders, right, Rafi? Big leaders?
Yeah, most of the time, I mean, if you're by structure, I don't really like anything less than 30 pound.
Yes.
If you're out on the flats, you can get away with 20, kind of let them run, but 25 is a go-to as well. Should like a
Explain,
little in between.
explain that for our listeners if you're out on the flats. I know exactly what you're talking
Yep.
about, and I believe I'm the same way. And the
Yep.
reason I like to go down to 20 if I'm on the flats is I have a better chance of getting the bite because it's a thinner leader. But explain to us
Yeah,
why.
them fish out on the flats, they're a little more aware of their surroundings. Every little thing you do counts. How you move on the
Yes.
boat, how even if you breathe wrong, sometimes
Yes.
the fish can spook from a mile away. So,
Yeah, and
any little advantage that you can take, in that situation, I usually try to take. I remember one time, I was going through this craze, kind of a little dumb. I was just throwing 15-pound leader, just straight 15 at every fish, and, I lost a lot of big snook like that.
in addition to what you're saying, when they're out on the flats, they have
Mhm.
less things to break you off on.
Yeah,
So if you
a
are in
lot
open
less.
water and they're taking off, you're a
Yep.
little less worried. I'm still a little, apprehensive. I'm still a little nervous. I'm still a little
Yeah, you
worried
definitely
about
gotta have the light drag, just
correct.
play them around. It's so funny. Um, in the case of bonefish, and you got open water flats, but it's so funny. Them bonefish know exactly where any little structure's at. I
Any little
mean,
mangrove
there
shoot.
could there could be a remnant of a crab trap. It just happened to me 2 days ago. I hooked the bonefish, got him to the boat, and I just looked over to the side of the boat. And I saw just this little tiny,
Mm.
remnant, just like a hair of a crab trap there. And I looked at it. I looked back at that bonefish. And I knew that second. I'm like, oh no. Oh no, he went straight for it. He went straight for it, went under the boat. I mean, I had to jump off the boat, go under the
Oh,
boat, but
did you get him?
yeah, got him. We got him. But
Love
yeah,
it.
that those are
Yes.
those are really the only situations, with light leader you gotta watch out for. Like if them fish, if they're big fish, they know what's up. They know where to wrap you around. They know where to go. That's pretty much it. But other than
Absolutely.
that, you could play them out. Unlike in structure, they don't really have much to like get you on.
Yeah, and you're on the flats, especially down there in South Florida. You get these mangrove shoots. You get these mangroves that are growing up, and they're growing up in the grass flats. And those bonefish and other species in the area will know exactly where to go to
Exactly
break you
where to
off.
go.
Sometimes
Exactly.
they don't swim in it; they might swim around it.
Yep.
It's the same thing when you're fishing big tarpon under the bridges down in the Keys. They know those bridge pilings. They know to swim in and around them. They go into a. I remember on my honeymoon, we were down in the Keys. We were fishing with a good friend of mine. He's been on the show, Captain Christian Cooley, and Brooke, my wife. She had never landed a tarpon. Our entire dating career, she hooked probably 50 tarpon, but we could never get one in the boat, man. Every time she would
Jeez.
jump one, and that was always the missing fish for our grandstand. We'd get the redfish, trout, snook
Yep.
really fast. And I'm like, babe, let's go. We're gonna go straight to the tarpon spot. She's all about it. She's like, let's do it. So we go there and we jump a bunch of fish, but we can
Yep.
never get one to him. So we're in Isla Morada. It's the last day of our honeymoon. We've got just a handful of live mullet, and we're
Hmm.
chucking them up towards the bridge. And literally, I think it was the last bait, and we hooked up and game on. And
Yeah.
she's reel screaming, Brooke screaming, the fish is thrashing and jumping. It took us to the bridge and it swam around, and we had to do some quick maneuvering with the skiff to get it untangled and all this and that, opening the bail. It's the same situation with these snook. They know exactly where to go to break you off, how to swim around the roots of the mangroves. And if you are not prepared with too light of leader, game over. You're going to
It's
lose.
game over most of the time. I was just out in the glades today, and it's so funny. I was, with a good buddy of mine today. Um, and he got to see something that I've been experiencing this year that, it's like, why are they doing this? Where did they get this behavior from? The redfish, you'll hook one once in a while and they take off for a second, they stop and they go straight into the mud. I'm talking like a foot in the mud and they just stay in there,
Wow.
like
Huh.
bury themselves. And there's no way the no amount you pull on the rod, you can't get them out. So you have to go up there, physically grab them and pull them out.
Whoa. I've never heard of that. That's wild.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah,
In our area here in the Mosquito Lagoon, Indian River Lagoon, our redfish, we're finally getting our grasses growing back. It's getting
yeah,
lush, it's getting thick. And redfish, I call them Houdinis. Okay.
yeah.
They will get into that grass
Real
and
thick.
disappear. And you're watching this fish, and they're in like a foot of water, and you're watching them swim, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, where'd he go? Like,
Yeah, they took the subway system.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. It's unbelievable how they can bury themselves so quickly and just disappear. It's unbelievable. I
Yeah,
tell
it's
you,
nuts.
I love I love inshore sight fishing. I love inshore saltwater, getting skinny, dude on the back pole and
Hmm.
inshore fishing. It is there's something special about it. I mean, you and I are blessed to be able to do that
Yep.
every single day. And it doesn't get old. The
No.
situations, the chasing the fish, the hunting the fish, the predicting the fish,
Yep.
and the more time you spend on the water, it becomes a little bit easier to predict. But there are still elements like pressure. What
Hmm.
day you got the day that you're going fishing, there could be more or less pressure.
Yep.
The tides, the moon, the amount of
If it's
sunlight,
raining,
cloud
if it's
cover,
raining,
all of these things
everything.
play into a role into where these fish are going to be, how they're going to respond. I've been on a really good snook bite
Hmm.
in an area that is very, very shallow. And I have been almost getting out of my boat and pushing my boat, not because it doesn't float skinny, but because
Hmm.
the water is so stinking shallow.
They
And
feel everything.
they feel it, but there's an area where they're sitting and it's deeper. You just got to get to them. And,
Hmm.
and man, I tell you, when you get to those fish, they're going to respond to it. But even then, like even right now, if I can get like 3 inches of rain, bro, those fish it'd be over, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they are so smart to be able to find a zone, stay in a zone, and then be just such predators.
Yep.
Right now, a ton of glass minnows in my area. We were talking
Hmm.
about picking fly over spin. If
Hmm.
I had the opportunity to pick a fly over spin when there's a ton of glass minnows around, I'm going to start with that DOA Terrorize, the mini.
Hmm.
It's very similar
Hmm.
to that glass minnow. But if they're so keyed in on that, then I'm going to go to like a little bitty like minnow fly
Yep.
pattern and try to get them to eat that fly. We got
Yeah.
1 minute. Let's finish up with that. If you are on the flats and you are
Mhm.
having if you have to pick one fly, what's your go-to?
Man, one fly. Um, pro- if it's I'd probably go a slider. If I'm in the glades, I'd go a slider. If I'm in Biscayne Bay, anything bonefish perma related, I usually try to go with some like a simple shrimp imitation. You can't go wrong with it. Something a little tan, maybe a little pink in it. You can't
Awesome.
really go wrong with it.
I tell you, those colors, especially the tan, when you go with something natural, is always my first go-to. Hey, listen, we've got Captain Rafael here from Biscayne Bay and Flamingo area. We got more to talk about. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. This is the Captain's Log Radio. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. Before we continue with Captain Rafael, Rafiki, Tiki down in Miami, hey, I want to invite you to connect with me on social media at the Captain's Log TV on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. There you can find all of our adventures. You can watch all full-length episodes of the Captain Logs. You can listen to all of the Captain's Log Radio previous episodes. But I want to connect with you as well. So make sure that you're tagging me, you're following along so I can follow you back. I can follow along on your adventures. I want to see what you're catching. So please jump in, connect with me on social media at the Captain's Log TV on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Of course, you can always listen to all of our radio show episodes on Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, and right here on the Outdoor Radio Network. Rafael, dude, let's talk our episode. Now, this episode has not released yet. Our season 7 is coming out. It came out this past weekend, our first
Mhm.
episode. And you are episode number 9, almost there at the end of the season. But we fished in Flamingo down in the Everglades National Park. And Flamingo is one of those places where it has been on my list for years. I mean, for years. So many times I'm going down the Keys and I'm like, man, I'm going to go to Robert is here, the fruit stand. I'm going to get a milkshake and I could either turn around and go back to the Blue Wall and head to the Keys, or I could keep going down past Roberts and head straight into Flamingo. And I had never done it. And I was like looking for that last, like, really big, awesome adventure trip for this season. And we connected. And I was like, bro, what's going on? And you're like, Jonathan, fishing's on.
Yeah,
Like,
let's do it.
get here. So we connected. We booked a trip. We went down to Flamingo Lodge, which you recommended.
Yep.
Bruh, incredible, incredible. If you are wanting to go and check out Flamingo, stay at the Flamingo Lodge. Great accommodations. Uh, Honestly, it was cush. I was way more cush than I expected. But we got up early, and the bugs were bad. And the
Yeah.
mosquitoes are terrible. But as
Yeah. They're
soon as
pretty
we
bad.
pushed away, you told it, you said it. As soon as we get away, we're going to be fine.
Yep.
And we got the boat in the water, pushed away. The sun was peeking up, and we got to a flat. And brother, there was no one around. I think we had one boat coming behind us, like halfway through the morning, but it was so, I don't know. It was old Florida. It was
Yeah.
insane. Tell me about our day. Why did you pick that specific spot? We don't have to be specific.
Yeah.
Why did you pick that certain spot?
There's so many places to run out there, but the problem is, that day we had a really strong east wind. I mean, we dealt with some pretty gnarly wind that day. I mean, 18 to 20 mile per hour winds. Um, it's nice to be a little sheltered. So, pick a shoreline, kind of look at your wind direction, try to like anticipate, okay, if I get behind this shoreline, I could get a little bit of protection, my day will go a little smoother, a little bit.
And
Um,
honestly, I think that played into our favor
yeah,
because it kept a lot of people off the water.
yeah, definitely. If it's blowing, I'm usually going. That's the only way to get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be able to find fish, consistently a little more, you got to go whenever you can. If it's blowing 20, if it's blowing with zero, if it's blowing, 30, sometimes you just got to go.
Yeah.
Just got to go get lost. And, it also makes you a better polar. I mean, if you're able to pull in 20 mile per hour winds, you're going to do really good in no wind.
Yeah. That's right. 100%.
Yep. But,
Well, we got to that shoreline
mhm.
and you were like, I mean, you had it dialed. You
Yeah.
said, Jonathan, I don't want to give away too much, but Jonathan, we're going to get up the shoreline and we're immediately going to start seeing tarpon roll.
Yeah,
As
the
we,
baby tarpon, it's that time of year, usually starting in the summertime, the baby tarpon like to come in. You got a lot of them oceanside big ones, migration wise, but later towards the midsummer, them little babies start to come out in waves, they love to be around, and especially on a hot summer day, early morning, you're usually gonna find a couple rollers or a bunch.
and truthfully, I like catching big tarpon,
Hmm.
but the little ones are more fun.
Yeah, they
Okay.
usually are.
So with these little fish, and I say little, they're 5 to 15 pounds.
Hmm.
They are they're gonna smoke it. They're
Yeah.
gonna hit it hard. You're using light tackle, so it feels like an even bigger fish. They're gonna pull drag. They're gonna jump. They're acrobatic. They're gonna get even higher than the big fish because they're so light and powerful that they can just launch themselves and propel themselves out of the water.
Hmm.
You don't feel wrecked. You can get the fish to the boat fairly quickly compared to the big ones where you're fighting these fish, 30,
Puffing and
40,
puffing.
50 minutes. Yeah, and you're out of breath, and it's a full body workout catching those big ones.
Yep.
And if you're not used to doing that, if you're not conditioned to doing that, you're not conditioned to the heat, because that's when these big ones are around. Well, except for the wintertime ones that get in there to Flamingo.
Yep.
The majority of the state right now, summertime,
It's
spring into
hot.
fall, it's hot, and that's
It's
when you're
hot.
catching tarpon. And if you're not conditioned to those elements, it's gonna whoop you. I don't care
Yeah.
how big and strong you are; it's gonna whoop you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no
And
stopping them fish sometimes.
yeah, so when you have an opportunity to catch little ones, yeah, little in comparison to the 100 plus pounders that are oceanside or migrating up and down each side of the coast. Okay, there's little in comparison, but they're still a 10 to 15 pound fish. They're
Yeah, and
still a
then
lot of fun.
sometimes, you'll be fishing them 10, 15 pounders, and there'll be waves of them. Sometimes there'll be like balls of like 100 of them, and
Wow.
right in the middle of them, there'll be like a 40 pounder. Just
Heck yeah.
that's like that to me is like, right there, like that to me is the most fun one, like 40, 50 pounder. It's big enough to like, do some damage, but it's just perfect. You won't really tire yourself out so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the small ones. I think,
Yep.
truthfully, now you made a joke about your redfish comparing to my redfish,
Yeah.
but the same is true to our tarpon.
Yep.
Our juvenile tarpon, I think, are the hardest juvenile tarpon to catch in
Yep.
the world. They
Yep.
are so pressured. They're so smart. The best time, and I don't wish this to happen, but the best time to catch them is after a hurricane. This is in my
Yep.
area because you
Yep.
get so much water dumping into the backcountry,
Yeah.
and all that water has to escape. So
Mm-hmm.
it's flushing out of the backcountry,
Mm-hmm.
which means that bait fish, little glass minnows, and little shrimp, and little crab are just flushing out with them,
Yep.
and they stack up. And then you just put a bait in front of them, a lure in front of them, and they smoke it. Okay,
Yeah.
and a lot of times, if you can get out on a full moon night, a real bright night, and there's a little bit of wind, and you get around those pipes, those culverts,
Mm-hmm.
you can get a lot of tarpon here at that time. But it's outside of that, it's really difficult. And
Yeah.
fly, a lot of times, is the best way to catch them here.
Mm-hmm.
And those mini terrorize that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But down there with you, bro, man, you fed them, you put it in front of them. A lot of times they react and they
Yep.
react positively. They want
Yeah.
to eat that fish.
As long as they're pretty blind, I would say. It kind of has to be like in their line of sight, those smaller ones down here, at least in the Everglades. But for the most part, as long as it, passes that general, face area, they're gonna go for it. Or they, you just might be a little off and they just don't see it. Not because they don't want it, they just can't see it. The water's so murky.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's making inshore fishing in general. If you can make the right presentation, putting it in front of the fish, paying attention to the fish, looking at the signs. So for instance, tarpon, they're rolling. Even these little fish, the juveniles are rolling, meaning their backs are coming out of the water. A lot of times their face, their back, and their tails are coming out of the water. So you have a visual. You
Hmm.
know which direction these fish are swimming. So now you have an idea of where to place your lure, where to cast, what angle to present this lure to this fish, and you're bringing it across their face. You want it to be as natural as possible. You bring it across the face, it's like, oh, I'm swimming away from you because you're going to eat me. And then they kick their tail and they slurp
Yep.
it in. Then it's over. It's like, oh, and it's an eruption. I like throwing top waters.
Hot
If
waters
I'm
are
throwing,
always fun.
yeah, I like throwing top waters at juvenile tarpon. And that could be like a little popper,
Hmm.
or if on the fly side, throwing a gurgler. I
Yeah.
like throwing the gurglers a lot. The thing with throwing the gurgler fly, it's a little popper fly, if you're not familiar. It looks like a little shrimp on the surface. Bloop, bloop, bloop. And I like to add a pause to it to just kind of make that noise, that presentation, and then give it a second. And I think what that does is it causes a reaction. They hear it and they're looking, then they see it, and then it moves again. And if you're doing
Yep.
it too fast, well, they might not. That's too much work. That's too many. I'm burned too many calories for what I'm going to get from eating it. But
Yep.
that little pause, and they're like, "Oh, there it is," and it moves again. Then they react to it. But one thing I have happened a lot with anglers who aren't used to doing it is if you're not paying attention, you're not thinking about it, when that fish explodes, because it is an explosion, it's sucking that fly into its mouth and it's an eruption. If you respond too quickly, prematurely, you yank it away, you lift the rod, you just, whoa, because you're startled, you will lose that fish. You will pull that fly or that lure away from that fish. So you really have to give them the opportunity to suck it in and then turn their face. And then you
Yep.
got to punch them in the face. I tell people all the time, these fish are talking bad about your mama, and you got to punch them in the face.
Yep. That's a good analogy right there. No, no, you're spot on with that. Especially like you said, punch them in the face. You got to hit them pretty hard because they got them hard like mouths, them bony mouths. So you got to make sure not using too light of a fly because I've had like even a 10 pounder, too light of a fly, they still bend it out.
Yeah.
Like just on the hook set because they got to get through that bone.
Yep. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
one of
And
my personal favorite flies to throw at some rolling baby tarpon. I really like you said, a top water, but I'd like to take those little shotgun double barrel floating heads.
Rafi, let me pause you because we're
Yep.
quickly coming on to a break.
Let's
When
do
we
it.
get back, let's go into that. I want to know about your favorite fly for these tarpon, and then we'll dive more into our episode. Hey, this is the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. We got so much to talk about, so don't go anywhere. We're right here on the Outdoor Radio Network.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. This is the Outdoor Radio Network. This is our third segment with Captain Rafael down in Miami, Flamingo, Biscayne Bay. Dude, before we got rudely interrupted by that commercial break, we were talking about juvenile tarpon and throwing fly. And you were talking about your favorite fly. Take us there. Take us back. Where are we going?
Yeah, I really like as you were stating in the previous segment of the podcast, I really like top water as you said, but I like to kind of make something that doesn't really pop because sometimes I kind of find that the pop, I've had it before that they spook from the pop. Sometimes they don't want something so abrupt.
Huh.
Sometimes fish change their mood. Sometimes some days they want to pop, some days they don't. But I like to take these little foam double barrel shotgun heads. They're like the little foam popper heads,
Yeah.
and you reverse them instead of using the popper segment. You kind of reverse it, and that way it kind of just floats on the surface, but it like moves water. It like just pushes water.
Huh. Did you come up with that? Or are you making that on your own, or you buying
No,
that
I
somewhere?
I just saw that one time. It's actually a guy up north, up Daytona area.
Okay.
It's a friend of my buddy, Michael Sharp.
Okay.
I saw he did like just he was always throwing these little top waters, and he made one time where he turned the popper head reversed, just so it didn't pop, but it just made surface movement and just stayed on the surface. In that shallow water condition, there's some situations you don't want to fly on the bottom. It's so shallow, you kind of want it right at their eye level. So
Yeah.
you throw that, makes a little commotion. They pop it.
I have some of those. I'm out. So behind my recording station, I have my fly tying station. So I got all
Hmm.
my materials here behind me or in front of me,
Yep.
behind y'all.
Yep.
And I have some of those, but I can't find them, which means a
Yeah.
couple little boys have been in here. There you go.
Right here.
Yeah, I have those exact same ones. They're somewhere here. That means a couple little boys have been in here playing with my fly material. But and those kids, I tell you, my 5-year-old is begging me to start tying flies with them. I was like, soon, little young grasshopper, very
Yep.
soon, very soon. I've got a buddy who's going to give me a fly vise that he got a new one. He's like, I want to give you the old one, give it to your
Hmm.
kid. And I was like, love it, love it. Yeah, I have those exact same ones. They're here somewhere.
Yep.
But yeah, no, that's genius, dude. Absolutely. See, and that's the thing. We talked about it earlier. If you're not getting the response, you have to be innovative. You have to
Yep.
figure it out.
Yep.
And going out, being on the time on the water. It's all about time on the water. So you're throwing that popper, Man, they're just not responding. You know what? I saw something.
Hmm.
I'm gonna take this fly today. I'm gonna try this. And Now it's moving differently. It's still on the surface, so it's still avoiding that grass. It's still avoiding structure. It's floating, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not making that same kind of noise, and you got the response. That's
Yep.
awesome. That's awesome. That is exactly what it's about, chasing fish inshore.
Yep.
Every day is different. That's
Every
probably
single.
the hardest part about a guide. I get asked every day, are the fish biting? Oh yeah, they have to eat.
They
Fish
have to
have
eat.
to eat.
Yep.
They have to eat. The question is, are they eating where we're going? And
Yep.
if they're not, when we get there, well then what's our response?
Mm-hmm.
Where do we go?
Yep.
I had a trip recently with a father and son. The son was 7 years old. He had never been fishing before.
Mm-hmm.
So immediately in my brain, I'm going, I'm not here to chase tarpon. I'm not here to chase redfish. I'm not even going to go after the snook. I'm going to go after little trout. Okay, 12 to 19 inches trout. I'm going to go after fish that are going to respond and crush a lure with little effort because I need this kid to catch fish. I need this
Yep.
kid to have a good experience. And so I knew exactly where I was going to go. And I have 7 of those spots, all within a 10-minute boat ride of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to the first one. We'll catch a couple. If it's kind of mediocre or if we're crushing it, we'll stay there or we'll move. We'll go to the next one and we'll bounce until we find the mother lode. And
Yep.
that's exactly what we did. We went to one spot, we caught 3 or 4. Okay, cool. Kind of slow, but we put some fish in the boat. Great start. You got some of the fundamentals down. You're figuring out how to cast. Let's go to the next spot. Oh, we caught like 15 at the next spot. Awesome. Had some dolphins around us, had some manatees. Kid was loving it. Dad's high-fiving me, high-fiving the kid. We go to our last spot, and he goes, "Why did you pick this spot?" It's just very random. And I was like, "You see this tree limb here? This big clump of mangroves?" He goes, "It looks terrible. It's dead." I'm like, "Exactly." I was like, "We broke off of this island. The hurricane knocked it and moved it over, 200 feet from where it was, and it stuck into the ground, and now it's perfect structure. Look at all the
Yep.
bait fish swimming around it." And it's because of time on the water, I was able to find that. I'm not tooting my horn. I'm going and telling you, time on the water.
Yep.
There's nothing like it. Yes, we have an advantage pulling up our phones, Google Maps, pull up the Fish Brain app, searching your area, looking what other people have done, but it doesn't make a difference until you get out there and start putting in the time, covering
Yeah,
the line.
anybody, could look at a mangrove and say, "Oh, there's got to be a fish under that mangrove." But when is there a fish under that mangrove? When is, oh, you could probably pull up at any time. Oh, there's one snook there, but you pull up another time. Hey, there's 20 snook here now. Why? Why are they here? Is it the
Yep.
tide? Is it the moon? Is it the sun? A good buddy of mine, his one of his best friends that unfortunately passed away a few years back. He was they called him like the snook whisperer. He was a really big snook fisherman, land based, but he knew everything there was to do about snook, when they would bite, what time to be at the place, all that. And he told my buddy, if you're out there and there is not a single cloud in the sky, I'm talking bright bluebird skies, you're probably not going to catch snook. You're probably not going to get them. And if there's at least one cloud in the sky, you're going to have you're going to get one. You're going to have a good time.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
all that knowledge is from putting in the effort, putting in the
Yep.
time. It
Just
doesn't matter. It
hours.
doesn't matter what industry you're in. Doesn't matter what skill you're trying to accomplish. Playing guitar, juggling, bowling, whatever. Pick. You're not going to just do it overnight. And I think that's the biggest struggle for me with fly anglers. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I love my fly anglers that are coming from up north or from out west. You guys are really, really talented with trout. You're really, really talented for streams. You're doing stuff and shooting flies in areas and working that fly and mending that line. But it doesn't translate to saltwater.
No.
So there's different skills for the trout streams. There's different skills for the saltwater. Okay. Having that experience makes the biggest difference.
Yep.
Doesn't mean don't go. Doesn't mean don't book a trip. Doesn't mean don't come down here and attempt.
Yep.
But go into it with, hey, I'm going to listen. I'm going to absorb. If the guide tells me to do something or tells me to practice the double haul before I show up, these are things you need to do. But
Yep.
it's all about time on the water and experience.
Yep.
And when you get those anglers that have it figured out, oh my goodness.
Yeah. No,
That's
one
so
that I really like, I've experienced is, one advice I could, say to the viewers is, if you're booking a guide, be honest with the guide. Let them know your skill level. Be honest with them. And even if you are a good angler, I still rather say, oh, you know what, I have room for improvement. I've had it several times. That I get a client reaching out to me, hey, I want to go bone fishing. I want to go fly fishing for bonefish. Okay, let's do it. Oh, yeah, you don't have to worry about me. I'm an expert fly fisherman. I'm like, okay, sweet, expert fly fisherman. I'm not, and this is not to make fun of anybody, but the gentleman gets on the boat, and I'm like, okay, let's give me a 50-foot shot. Let me just see how you shoot. Let me see, how I could position you the best, how you like your form and whatnot. Guy couldn't cast more than 10 feet. And I asked him, what do you mostly fish for? And he goes, oh, I like to, I'm a musky fisherman, so he's there trying to water load, letting the fly line hit the water, then pulling it back, letting it hit the water, back and forth, and he's water loading. I'm like, unfortunately, that doesn't work here. You got to keep that fly line up. Can't let it touch the water. He's like, for real?
yeah.
Yeah. So, always be honest with your guide. I mean, again, even if you're an expert, I mean, a good buddy of mine, Tommy, he he's a really good fly fisherman, but he loves to he'll go like to Mexico or Belize or something, and he'll tell the guide, I've never fly fished once in my life. Never fly fished once in my life. Never touched the rod. And the guy's like, okay, let's do it. I got you. He'll go, all right, let me see a cast. And he just throws like 80 feet. He's like, you never touched the rod?
I love that. I'm gonna steal that. That's amazing.
But
Taking where the fish are easy, and then you bust out an 8-foot cast.
yeah, but it's always better to be a little conserved than like, oh, I'm an expert, I'm the best. Always be honest most of the time,
Oh,
unless you're Tommy and you're lying just for a little joke.
yeah. No, listen, because when you're not honest,
It makes it
and
difficult.
or when you show up, you're gonna call yourself out pretty quick. We're gonna
Yep.
know very, very quick. And then the
Yep.
game plan changes, and now the game plan is, oh, I got to find something easy so we can get a fish in the boat and then kind of work on that skill. Dude, great intel. We started that segment talking about the episode, and we're quickly coming to an end on this segment. When we get back, I want to talk more about our episode because we just started with just the tarpon at the beginning.
Yep.
And then we'll transition to what you're catching now and then what's coming.
Yep.
But we've got a lot still to talk about. So don't go anywhere, guys. I've got Captain Rafael with me from Miami, fishing Biscayne Bay and Flamingo. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss with the Captain's Log Radio, and we're here on the Outdoor Radio Network. We'll be right back after these short breaks. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. I got Captain Rafael with me. We've had a great conversation. We've been a little all over the place, but focused in on catching snook and redfish and juvenile tarpon and even some bonefish. We started the last segment talking about our episode, and I want to continue with that just for a minute. We got into those juvenile tarpon. And then we moved from there looking for redfish and snook. I did pick up a trout that I don't think is going to make it to the episode, but we ended up catching 4 species, which is the grand slam. And one of my favorite parts about our episode is we're fishing out of Flamingo. And I don't know, dude. There's going to be 2 episodes this season with flamingos. And we typically get like actual flamingos, like the bird.
Yeah.
We get flamingos here for like a week or 2 in the wintertime. It's very strange. And then they disappear.
Yep.
And I tell you, we've had flamingos now for like a year. They haven't left.
Yep.
And I ain't mad about it at all.
Yeah.
I think they're beautiful. I had a guy book me. I ran a double, 2 half days. I backed my trailer into water, and I got on my truck, and this guy walked to me and goes, "Hey man, are you a licensed guide, a permitted guide here in the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge?" I said, "I am." And he said, "I'd like to book you for a charter." I said, "Awesome. When do you want to go?" And he goes, "Right now." I was like, "Oh, bro, I just ran a double, an 8-hour. I'm tired. Like, I don't want to go out." And I'm like, "What do you want to do?" Because he had a giant camera around his neck. He's like, "I want to go take pictures of birds."
Oh, there you go.
And I was like, "Let me call my wife." I call my wife, and I was like, "Babe, I'm here. Guy wants to go. It'll probably just be a couple hours because it's getting close to dark. This is wintertime." And she goes, "Just do it. You're already there." I was like, "All right." So I look at the guy, I gave him a thumbs up. He's like, "When do you want to go?" I'm like, "Right now. Like, I'm going to go park my truck. Let's just go."
Yeah.
So I pulled out of the ramp, and he gets on the boat, and he goes, I said, "So what do you want to look at?" And he goes, "Flamingos." I was like, "You got to be kidding." Like, that's the hardest bird around here to find. And I was like, "I got one spot. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, there's going to be a bunch of pelicans."
Yep.
We got there, and by the grace of God, there was 1 flamingo. Well, now there's like half a dozen, and they've been there for a while. But with our episode, we were fishing a flamingo, and I was really praying we'd find some. Bro, we hit the mother load of flamingos. I don't know, was there 25, 30 flamingos there?
I think there was like 50.
I mean, there was a lot.
There was a lot. And they were definitely fans of the show because they flew real close in to say hi.
Yeah, they did. And you said something, and it's true. Anywhere you go, and I've experienced this, in my own waters. I've experienced this all over the Southeast. Do you remember what you said about the birds?
When in doubt, go to the birds.
Yeah.
Go to the birds. The birds know where everything's at.
Last week, we had Captain Justin Anderson of Historic Coast Outfitters on the show, and we're talking about fishing those creeks in Northeast Florida. And I experienced this with Captain Matt Almlor first. He's the one who really pointed it out to me in these creeks. You'll have these little egrets walking the bank. And when you see that, there's redfish around. 100%, guaranteed. Same deal. You go offshore, you look for birds. If I'm redfishing out on the flats and I see seagulls hovering, flying in one spot, like 4 or 5 of them, 100%, 10 times out of 10, 100 times out of 100, 1,000 times out of 1,000. If they're doing that, there are tailing redfish underneath it.
Yep.
The birds know where the fish are.
Yeah, they know where the bait is at. I don't know what it is. Maybe they know, they're around all the shrimp and the crabs. Who knows? But they definitely know what's up. They definitely know where everything's at.
Think about you're fishing in a couple of feet of water. These fish are in a couple of feet of water, okay, or less. They are bumping up shrimp, crabs, mullet, pinfish. They're rooting through the grass. They're looking for food. Now, these baits are getting pushed to the surface, and those birds are hovering and looking and circling way overhead, looking for those freebies.
Yep.
That's exactly what's going on.
Yep.
Same with along the mangroves. You'll get birds that will get on the mangroves and pick off baits. It's very cool and fun to watch. And that was one thing we figured out pretty quick. Hey, you find the fish or you find the birds on those flats and Flamingo, you're going to find the fish.
Yep.
We had a great episode. I can't wait for it to come out. It was a lot of fun. It won't be the only time we film together, I
Nope.
guarantee you.
Nope.
And I cannot wait to do it again. And I love Flamingo. I want to explore more down there, and I'd love to get down on a day that it's slicked out, so
Yeah.
that we can go all over, and maybe even run the Cayo all the way to Alamorada, have a
Heck
lunch
yeah.
over at the Lorelei, and then run back with that
Yeah.
90 Zook on the back. We can make a short trip out of it.
40
But let's
minutes at
talk.
least.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about what you're catching now. We've got 6 minutes left in this segment, about halfway through.
Yep.
Let's talk about what you're catching now and what we're going to be transitioning to as we get to fall.
Yep. So right now, we're kind of in the middle of summertime right now. Tarpon season's starting to, prime tarpon season's starting to die down, but there's still quite a few big ones around. Red fishing's full swing right now out in Flamingo. Snook are out and about. They're nice and happy. Usually, like right now, midsummer is when you start to see a lot of more schoolies, a lot of like cookie cutter 25 inchers out on the flats being happy. Lot Trout's kind of they're around, but wintertime's more like when the trout are really happy. And we're actually encountering a lot of black drum too right now on the flats, a lot of them. Bone
And those
fishing.
sheep's head.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't forget about the sheephead. Yeah. Schools of sheephead tailing that you think they are redfish. They're everywhere. But and then you go to Biscayne Bay, bone fishing. Summertime's really good for bone fishing. Just gotta watch out for those really hot days. When that sun's in full swing, if it gets too hot, they kind of turn down. And permit fishing right now is really good. But as we're going into the fall, we're gonna get a lot bigger snook, a lot of bigger snook, a lot of bigger redfish, hopefully, a lot of happy redfish, bigger bonefish. Permit kind of tend to die down a little bit on the flats, but
Heading out deeper water.
yeah, they had it just a little bit, just a little bit, but fall is usually a good time that you could catch everything. You want to get a Biscayne Slam. Fall's a good time of year to do it. You get a bonefish, permit, and a tarpon, on one day. Yep.
Well, what I need to do is I need to set up a trip with you and film with that, and then call Yuli and do an episode with Yuli.
Yep.
Spend a couple of days down there in Miami. Maybe set up a peacock bass episode as well. That might be.
Oh yeah.
Like
Heck yeah.
Miami series, do 3 episodes down in Miami. That'd be a lot of fun. Hit Flamingo, hit Biscayne, and then go hit some canals.
Yep.
That'd be a lot of fun. What are you throwing right now? If you're out on the flats, summertime, if you're trying to catch one of the slams, redfish, trout, snook,
Yep.
black drum, tarpon, whatever. What are you throwing artificial wise, lure wise?
Right now, my usual go-to year round is just simple white fluke on a weedless hook. Usually gets everything done. That's pretty much the only thing I throw on a spinner. If it's not that on a spinner, I'm most of the time 90% of the time I'm throwing fly. Even if I'm out there scouting alone, I'm on top of the pulling platform with a fly rod, ready to make it happen.
And what fly are you throwing right now?
Yeah, right now, I'm throwing a lot of like shrimp imitations. Anything with a lot of flash, a little pearl flash, a little gold in it, and then anything deer hair. Really does wonders. A little craft for some deer hair, like kind of like a little Borsky slider. That's usually a go-to that'll catch just about anything out there on the flats in Flamingo.
Love it. Transitioning into fall, are your baits changing? Or like in my area, we go from a lot of mullet to a lot of shrimp. Do you have that kind of experience down there? Are you changing your fly and your lure?
Usually in the fall, pretty much a little bit everywhere, you start to get the fall mullet run. At least in Flamingo, we don't really get that mullet run, but like in Biscayne Bay, we'll get like spurts of the mullet run, and a lot of time, you'll have a lot of mullet where the bonefish will be. But usually you'll get a lot of mullet, and then our shrimps and stuff get bigger. Wintertime, a little bit bigger bait. Whereas in the summertime, you can get away with throwing a little bit smaller. They kind of prefer it. They're very on high alert in the summer with all that heat. They don't want to lose a lot of energy, trying to eat something that, they think they can't eat.
Yeah.
So throwing a little smaller profile, getting it nice and close to them will usually do the trick.
And I really want to hit this home. I talk about this all the time, and I know I'm a broken record, but I really want it to resonate with you. I really want you to get it and understand this time of year when it's hot, okay, there is less dissolved oxygen in the water. So bump up your gear. Go bigger so you can get those fish in quicker. Rafi, if people want to book you, how do they find you? Where are you located? How do they get hold of you?
You can find me on Instagram, Captain Rafiki Tiki. You could also find me at my website, Twlight Delight Charters. And also, Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes, I'll have a couple buddies, recommend me,
Okay, awesome. Love it. So, what was the website again?
Twilight Delight Charters.
Twilight Delight Charters. We talked about that on the boat, and I went blank there. I was like, I know what it is. What is it? Something Delight. TwilightDelightCharters.com. Rafi, so good to have you on the show, man. I cannot wait for everyone to see our episode. Fishing down at Flamingo, getting the slam, killer day. It was very few days where we actually are done early. Bro, it was 10 o'clock, and we're like, well, let's see if we can get one more fish. See if we can upgrade a couple, because this was awesome. But so good to have you on that show. So good to have you here on the radio show. If you guys want to go fishing down at Flamingo, hit up my boy, Captain Rafiki Tiki, on Instagram. You're going to absolutely love it. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. This is the Captain's Log Radio Show here on the Outdoor Radio Network. See you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.